I want the ingots to get primed up to the smelters, so I'm shutting off all the things that make all the ingots. You know, rather than do that, I'm just gonna put a smart splitter on the line, and then I can see if it's turned on and off. Well, I guess the easiest way to do that is go to the end of the line and put a smart splitter on the end of the final parts machine, the motors, and yeah, that's this. So now these will stop, and then the line will automatically back itself up through all of these machines all the way to the iron ore. And the reason why that's necessary and important is there shouldn't be any gaps in the line. If there's gaps, then the system isn't primed, and any machines are trying to fill the gaps in the line as they're producing stuff, which is why there's the split second of yellow lights. But when it comes to big factories like this, the easiest thing to do is to go to whatever endpoint there is, because every factory has an endpoint, and just put a smart splitter on the final part box and set it to none, and then take some parts out of the box and put it in the, drag it over to the output panel for the part thing so it fills up the line, and then yeah. And again, the reason why that's important is the conveyor belts are no different than the pipes in the sense that if there's space on the line, it's like air gaps in the pipes. The system will run, it'll probably run okay, but it's not running as well as it could run on an on-demand system that's primed. Because whatever machine between input and output of the next set of machines is trying to fill up the gaps in the line while also trying to feed the machine. Like, it's not necessary to fully prime everything, in the sense where every single buffer storage box on the input and the output of the sets of the machines is full, because that'll take a while. It only has to be to where each part box has some amount of stuff in it, and the lines are full up to the part box. I mean, then you get the same effect of the lines being primed without having to wait for the entire box to be full. And then you have the downside of there being cases where the parts are not emptied quite fast enough, which puts a slight delay on the output of the machines that came before that part box. So it's better to have like a 90% full part box, or like missing 1 or 2 stacks of whatever part box if you want like total efficiency, because then there's a full buffer to fill up the line on demand any place where a machine needs a part on the output, and the output isn't full to where the machine ever shuts off that's going into that machine. I mean, it'll run well enough, but just like with fuel generators that sputter when you try to fill up the pipe and with fuel as it runs, like they turn on and then they turn off, they turn on and they turn off, and then they turn on and then they turn off. It's because there's gaps in the line. And the difference between a fuel generator and a regular conveyor belt on parts is it's really noticeable when the fuel generator shuts off, but it's the same exact thing with parts on a line that isn't primed. You just don't notice it as much. You might not notice the yellow light. Like, you could be looking this way for yellow lights and all the yellow lights are behind you, and then when you turn around, the yellow lights are behind you still. Everywhere you turn, you just see green lights, but there's yellow lights behind you. I mean, it's an unlikely potentiality, but it most certainly does happen, and it's because of unprimed conveyor belts. The nice part is you can turn the final output off, and see that last assembler in that set of 3, because there's 6 of them, is about to turn yellow any second now. I mean, I could speed up the process by dragging whatever, and it's off. So there's one green one over here. Okay, so now these are all completely off. These part boxes are full up to the input boxes that get split between the 6 machines. Then it's not completely full. There's a buffer. The same thing is true for the plates. It's not a huge buffer, and you can manually adjust the machines to do this. But the thing that I was going to say is you can let everything fully back up throughout the entire line all the way up to the ore, and then turn it back on, and you don't have to worry about it auto-regulating itself to the max efficiency state of taking one thing out of the containers, because it does that by itself anyway. This is just the lazy way to do it, because otherwise I would have to go through Frame City over there to find every output box and make sure that it's regulated. No, it'll happen on its own. So I gotta take the output from that box and merge it with the output from that box, and then run a line. To the toolbox part box. Oh geez. You know, that's an idea. I don't know if it's necessarily a good idea because I just had the idea, but if you could toggle going into hypertubes on the character and not the hypertube, like you could hit a button and you won't get dragged into a hypertube like I did. I mean, it's totally not a necessary thing. I could see them never adding it to the game and be totally fine with that. Because again, I just thought about it, but like, something to think about. Like if you could make just a hotkey that toggles entering the hypertube, so then you could, you know, kind of bumble around your base and while looking at what you're trying to build and not accidentally get sucked into a hypertube. And I have no idea how it's actually put together, but I'm pretty sure it could just be like, you know, you go to wherever the hypertube entrance part of the code is and be like, you add another global variable for the player. And if it's 1, it's on, if it's 0, it's off. And it's just an if statement someplace, like, you know, wherever the code is that, you know, triggers the entrance sequence for the pipe. Well, if the don't go in thing is turned on, then you could, like, you know, just rub the characters whatever all over the freaking hypertube entrance and you won't go into the pipe because that piece of code would never execute. And then you just tie that to a keybind. But again, I have no idea what the code really looks like, but in a pseudo-functional, like a pseudo-code, conceptually, I mean, that's pretty much how it would work. If case, then case code. And then within the case code, oh, well, if this is true, then do this. If, well, don't do that is true, then don't do that. It makes me think of the meme of the drone code. It's like people write out pseudocode and then, you know, somebody who's making fun of somebody for writing out pseudocode, like, well, if gonna crash, then execute don't. Like, but the funny part is that's how it works when you write the code too. And I think that's funny. You know, like, you imagine like the trope of like the 90s hacker movie, like you got somebody with a VR headset on, you know, hacking the Gibson and like, you know, got the techno music and doing the techno industrial raver dance. You got the black light and the Nag Champa and the black light like dragon poster and like listening to like, you know, TS 404 and 808, you know, old school techno music, like like, and like writing in some like weird like esoteric language that's not even like perceptible to humans, and like, no, it's really closer to, you know, the drone meme is like, if gonna crash is true, then run don't. Like, I mean, no, it's really yeah, if this, then not that. I get a little distracted here. It's like talking to somebody on a phone. You're not paying attention, and you just like, sky pancake. You're not paying attention, like, you know, you walk halfway around the world or whatever. The trope of that joke that I'm badly referencing and doing a worse job of paraphrasing. Shut up, Sky Pancake. I'll turn you into a power shard. Okay, so yeah. This is another thing I don't particularly like doing, because it just kind of looks not great, in my opinion. But, not because it looks bad in itself or the items or anything else, but it just, like, where is it? It's these. But after having to do it so many times for this particular playthrough, like, I've avoided doing this wherever possible. This is just easier. And the way that it looks is kind of grown on me, which is the whole reason. That's the point of me mentioning that. Is at first I didn't like it. You know, I tried to avoid doing it as much as possible, to the point where I would redesign a whole factory, because it just seemed too lazy. But now that's the best way to deal with inputs and outputs on tower storage and with mergers and everything else. Is just, if you got to go over one and down one, the best way to do that is this. It's taken me, what is it, 900 hours or something in the game to be like, yeah, okay, that's not okay. But yeah. I thought of this before. you know, everything, like I said, I've said this before, but again, every video is basically, I treat it like a unique video, so I end up repeating myself a lot of the time. But I do that because there's a better chance that nobody's going to see every part of every video. I say that every time too. But I forgot what I was saying. Crap. I totally forgot what I was saying. It was something kind of important and I got distracted by explaining the thing where I repeat the thing in the video every time. Oh well. I don't think it was important. No, I don't remember what it was. Oh well. Oh, that's what it was. And the thing that I was gonna repeat is this reminds me of the Homer meme where he gets liposuction. And everything is relatively nice and neat, not too out of control or spaghettified. Like, you can kind of tell that this is all supposed to go together. You can kind of tell that that's all supposed to go together. You can kind of tell that that all goes together. You know, it's like somewhat organized. You know, this is all the endpoint manufacturers for all the stuff, like, or the endpoint assemblers. And then down here, looks like the back of the Homer meme. This is the spaghetti zone, and then, you know, I was standing here looking at it and I thought of the spaghetti zone. And it makes me think of the meme where it's like they're gonna send you to the Shadow Zone, Jimbo, and they're playing like Yu-Gi-Oh or whatever it is. Well, this is the spaghetti zone. So like, and I had forgotten about it until I remembered it right now. It's like, you know, it'd just be easier if that went that way. But, you know, as you're running the lift down into the spaghetti zone, you could say, well, I'm gonna send you to the spaghetti zone. There, Jimbo. You know, the 6-hour lead up for like a terrible delivery of a really not particularly great joke. Yeah. Yeah, I gotta do the, gotta start using turbo fuel. I gotta make a turbo fuel packager. And I was gonna use the existing packager, but I'm just gonna make it one just attached to the end of turbo fuel. And then I don't have to worry about flushing the fuel out of the one or trying to make it adaptable or changeable. Just make a new one. Okay, so there's frames. I don't think I ever ran sheets from the sorter. I know I've got a sheet input and a rod input. Okay, no, I do have one from the sorter for sheets, but not for rods. And if I don't get one from rods from the sorter, then the sorter will just stay full, which kind of defeats the point of having the sorter. And then every time I have to go over here to get parts, which is the whole part of the part aisle. This should be plates. Plates are ran. Rods are ran. What? I looked before I came over here, and so that's rods. Okay, no, they were in here. What else? I don't think I have concrete ran over here. And that, at least not ran over here from the sorter. I guess I'll just merge it into this line. That way at least some of it gets consumed and processed by the front end sorter and not the overflow loop in the back. Concrete. So here's the concrete sorter. You know, I kind of have needed a tube that goes from down here to up top the whole time. But it's right in between, like, where the ramp isn't that far of a run up to the top from wherever that part is, like. And then I would just have an extra hyper tube in the way. So yeah, I gotta do all of these. I mean, because I have been sending screws, and if eventually this box gets full, it gets kicked to the overflow. And it will stay full unless I put an output on it. I don't even know where I have anything that needs screws. But if I put it off and don't do it systematically to where everyone has an output, then it'll never get done. And I'll just keep ignoring it. And then eventually it'll be a problem when the sorter is full of screws, and then I'll have a backlog of screws and have to modify the overflow. But since I typically don't send screws through anyway, but the typically don't send screws through anyway doesn't remove the fact that not having an output means that it's just going to get backed up. I'm going to send you to the spaghetti zone there, Jumbo. I like this though, it's like its own aesthetic. Especially at nighttime with these belts, it kind of looks like stars. And it's cool because if you're not looking at just one belt, it looks crazy. But if you look at any one belt, it makes sense. And it's both at the same time. Like, if you try to look at the whole picture, it looks crazy. But any one belt just goes from one set of machines to another set of machines in the easiest way for me to get the conveyor belt there as possible, relative to the current state of whatever is in the way in Spaghetti Land. Where are the screws? Are this screws? No. The screws. There's some screws. There's rods, screws. You're going to the spaghetti zone, Jimbo. Yeah. So whereabouts was that? A paired rear. You are out of screws. Yeah, I'm gonna have to turn beams off too. I don't even know what I have consuming beams. I think the only thing is the versatile framework and the encased beam maker, which I'm pretty sure that's shut off. Yeah, it's off. What am I gonna do with these beams? I mean, I know what I'm gonna do with them, but I don't think I'm using steel beams or anything else. And they're not being consumed at all, because I'm not consuming these at a fast enough rate. I gotta run this line over and merge that to the toolbox line too, because all of these concrete beams have been just coming from the concrete beam makers over at Cole the whole time that they've been running since I put them in and been sorted and collected and not gone in an awesome sink. Every single Mark IV belt. Just those two concrete beam makers. And then I made this to chew through the parts and have an excess. But yeah, I got two. I come over here, or to get beams to finish that thing. That's a good job there, Parrot. And every quick wire that comes out of that box is no longer in that box, which means that the sorter can't get backed up again. I do need to make a quick wire box over here. I don't think I have a quick wire box. I should probably merge this line with that line before I say quick wire is done. The other reason that I run conveyors like this is the same way that I would need to get there as a, like the player, to get wherever the conveyor belt goes from point A to point B, is the same path that the conveyor belt should take. Because then if it ever comes time for me to do maintenance on the belt, then I'm gonna have to get back up to wherever the belt was anyway. So while it seems lazy, it's actually probably the best way to run large amounts of conveyors across large distance between many machines, because otherwise it'd all be up here and you'd have to try to organize buses. And I mean, it's doable and it looks nicer and it's its own aesthetic in itself, but this way you get the best of, you know, both worlds. The top and, you know, this part looks nice and organized and you can tell what everything does. And then you get the absurdity and the craziness of Spaghetti Land. But Spaghetti Land, for all its craziness, is set up in the way that makes the most sense. It's the easiest way to set it up. But yeah, this isn't me saying one thing is better than the other thing. This is a aesthetic appreciation thing, which is not the same as me saying inline splitting compared to tree splitting. Tree splitting wins by a long distance. One of the rare times that I dedicate machines only to toolboxes. Because sometimes I might use an entire box or two of concrete to build a platform. So I think I'm just gonna send that to the shadow zone and then put a splitter on it. So it's make this a quick wire box. Oops. Yeah, I figured that wasn't gonna work. It's kind of like a multi-layered PC board. I gotta do something here, so stare at Spaghetti Land. There's a slug in here. Some berries. Can I blow these up? Crap, I blew up the flower. Oops, blew up the berry bush. What's the radius on these? Like if I blow this up, I'll blow that up. Does it work on the big rocks? Yeah, that's pretty cool. Gonna make you into a bacon smoothie. Parrot. So, yeah, I gotta merge beams. So it starts emptying out that box. And since it's all happening at the same time, I'm pretty sure The encased beams are already coming over here. I should see the line with the beams on it. Because where else would they be coming from? Is it one of the... Is it this one? Yeah. Oh, geez. Beams. So nah. Why did I do that? In so many words, what I'm saying is, this is an art form. Not particularly sophisticated, but that's another thing that's relatively subjective. Okay, so the beam machine should fire back up now. It should start eating the beams out of the overflow box and from the, yeah. No? Sending beams. Maybe it's not produced enough to empty this? Oh, it's not getting any concrete. I gotta turn the concrete back on. It must have gone through everything in the buffer. It does chew through parts. So the backlog must be empty. I gotta go check that. If I take parts, I should see it filling from... Yep. Nice. So many pipes. It is emptying pipes though, slowly. And I've shut off all the pipe machines, so it's just slowly chewing through the backup. But since this is still full and this is still going around on a loop, it should be emptying out the beam machine. Huh. There's concrete. I never finished running concrete. No. Got distracted. Okay, well that explains that. It also explains why there was a backup in the parts thing and the other thing. It was only running off of the concrete split from the parts. So I could just merge that output to the parts output. This is concrete. Looking at the wrong splitter. This should be concrete. Or not. Maybe it's up front. I think it's up here. Hey, I found the bot. Okay. Yeah, and it's not running from the part reserve either. Crap. So this has to go over to the concrete line, and that has to come over to here. And again, I'm usually like big time redesign everything because it's clipping normally, but right now I don't care. Why would it put the box up here? I don't think I'm going to be able to get the box if I put the thing here. And the nice part is, I just realized I could easily just add more modules going this way and then make the turn down here and reconnect it if I wanted to and leave everything else the same. Which is why I moved that box from over there. It's because I didn't want it to be like a semi-permanent thing. This way it's out of the way. And I can still do that if I want to. Which I'm probably going to have to anyway. I kind of felt like Foamy the Squirrel there for a second. The other nice part about these connections is once they're connected, you're done. You don't have to do it again. And the same path that you would take from one spot to the other spot is the same as once the conveyor is put in. It's like you running back and forth in the same path that the conveyor takes anyway. It's like the engineer in Team Fortress 2 when he places a teleporter exit someplace. All of the running that he did in that one path from when he put the exit to when he, or the entrance to when he put the exit, is like he's doing all the running for every other person that takes a teleporter. Which I know that's a strange segue, but it's even more strange that it kind of makes sense. Where is the rubber box? Do I not have a rubber box? Oh, I don't think I have a rubber box. And maybe it's because I don't mean it to sound a certain way that it does sound a certain way, but it's kind of funny, but some of the stuff that I say is like unintentional double entendre, but it is entirely unintentional. Like, it's not like triple entendre or like, you know, quadruple or octuple entendre. Like, I've been babbling into the microphone for like 20 minutes, and I've been muted. And absolutely none of it was anything particularly important. Be like that dude I saw on stream that one time. Go in there, he's got 0 viewers. I'm like, what is he doing? And he's talking to chat like he's got a chat in there, and he's asking him questions. He's like, chat, is this real? And it's like, there's nobody in there. And I know nobody watching the VOD would know the difference if there was anybody in the chat or not. Except for I'm pretty sure they show the fluctuation of population as the stream goes on. Or they used to. What was that? But yeah. Once all the modules have been connected to their appropriate connections, then I don't have to connect to them again. I'm almost done with most of the base parts, it looks like. And empty. Copper wire. I can't say that I don't care about it because otherwise it'll back up and go to the overflow, so I have to patch every sorter into a toolbox or a machine. Because otherwise it's just making a problem for later. You are missing screws. What part was it? Oh, wire. Yeah, I do think that looks cool. Must continue running shorter line. And then there's that, is like, if I'm gonna record a video and play the game, is if I don't want to do something, then don't complain about it and record myself complaining about it. Like, well, what if I feel like it? Well, what if I enjoy complaining about it? What if that's part of the fun? I mean, I might complain about having to run all these lines, but it is a lot of lines to run. But it'll look pretty cool when it's done. I mean, it already kind of looks pretty cool now. It's getting kind of difficult to run the bus, which is why I just keep adding box going that way, because then it makes it easy. That's crazy. I still haven't gotten signs. And this whole time I haven't had any machines producing cable. Like zero. And I'm gonna need a bunch of cable for computers, which is why I haven't made a dedicated cable machine. But while I'm doing this, I should do that while I'm thinking about it after I run this cable line. Gonna send you to the spaghetti zone there, Jimbo. And I'm missing plates. No. No, I should have checked for that before I came over here. No. Crap. So it makes 90, and this would make 90 cable, but that would be 180 cable a minute, or 180 wire a minute. So I guess 1.5 machines, or double the, or just set the wire to 50% would probably be the easiest thing to do. No, that isn't right either. It just makes 90. What am I doing? So it would be 90 divided by 60. So it would be 1.5. Got the hacker music going in my mind. was 2 hours. Holy crap. Every part box must go to a box. No. Which one is this one? Copper sheet. There's another one I do need to run. But again, this has been 2 hours. I think this, what is this last one here? No, I think that's the last of all of the base parts. The parts that I'm most likely to use, and the parts that are most likely to be produced or thrown in the sorter or grabbed out of the toolbox, or that need to be in the toolbox and not over here in the sorter. Like, I think this is the last one. I'm gonna have to go out around all of this stuff to get over to the copper sheets. Or do I? You know, I could just merge it with this copper sheet line that's over to the right, that goes over to the circuit boards and the AI limiters. Finally. But yeah, I mean, you can't just do stuff without thinking about it. So all the time that I've spent staring off into space, looking at Spaghetti Land, and thinking about the next thing that I gotta do, like, you have to make a plan. And certain things take certain priority at certain times. But it's finally done. All of the base parts that are connected to the sorter now have their appropriate splitter, merger, input and outputs, and including the overflow, which not all of the overflow is completed, I'm pretty sure. I mean, we got plastic done, rubber done, concrete done, steel beams. I think I've got steel beams done. I might not have steel beams done. I'm gonna check that and then call it a video. Do I not have steel beams over here? Or is that steel beams? Or that's something else? I could have swore I had steel beams in the overflow circle. No, that's rubber. Oh, here's steel beam. But it doesn't look like it's connected to anything. Nah. And if I stop doing this now, I'll forget about it and it'll never get done and it'll be a problem later. But if I do it now, it'll slowly chew through all of the parts. So up there is the output. I gotta do the same thing that I did with concrete. And then I think I'm just gonna merge it over there. So it goes into the part box. So there's the line that I have to run, and here's where it needs to go. So if I go down that way and out and around to here, I can put the splitter like right here, and it should miss the pipe of the merger. And I should be able to connect it there. And since this is here, run it along this way. Oh no, I'm out of freaking beams again. I don't think there's a tube anywhere over there. There's not. I mean, the closest tube is that tube, but I do kind of need one, like, right about here. Yeah, that was pretty cool. I was wondering how difficult that was going to be to do. Where are the beams? I guess they're further down here. Yeah, I need to put signs in this thing. I don't remember where anything is. And it's not like it's not uniform and looks all the same in all directions. I still have to finish this. Can't think of anything else. So that should be all of the main parts. It should be all of the overflow parts in the overflow circle. That should be everything. And I've got a cable machine, so all of the base parts now have a corresponding toolbox. Yeah, it's gonna take a while for this thing to back up. It's still consuming rods. I don't think it's gonna stop consuming rods because I never shut off the motors. No! No! 2 hours after my speech about the frame and motor city and everything else, and it's putting in the smart plates, and I forgot to put in the smart. No, I think it's this one. I think no, this one is AI limited. Yeah, I get lost in my own factory. I gotta put signs up Gotta figure out how to do signs. Still don't have the Obelisk out here. But yeah, when it comes time later, and I've forgotten that I've shut these off, we're out of space. It'd be nice if the public notes or the notes or whatever was... It'd be nice if the notes, you know, you had more space in the notes. Don't forget to turn motors and frames back on at the smart splitters endpoint. Okay, so yeah, when it comes time later and I think that I've just got Tower O parts or whatever, you know, Tower O motors, and it's empty because I forgot about it. Yeah. But I want the ingots to get backed up in the line to get primed, which was the whole point of doing that, which was... I wanted that to happen while I was working on the sorter in parallel. So now I gotta wait for the rod box to fill up. Well, I guess I'll just... Well, I wrote it down. Don't forget to turn motors and frames back on at the smart splitters endpoint. But yeah, I gotta call it a video. It's nice I got all of that stuff done. Digga digga doo, digga 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 doo, digga 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 doo, digga 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 doo, digga 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 doo.